Hi, folks. Up until about 1824, Mexico was going through some changes. They had become independent, but they wanted to form a government that was really stable. That happened in 1824 when they founded the federal constitution. The federal constitution was formed in 1824. That was a good thing. The only problem was the factions that came together created a government that would include what's called Coahuila, Texas. I'm going to Aquila section of Texas, or Aquila section. And let me see if I can give you a better spelling of that real quick. It's the Coahuila. It is the area that is primarily south of the Rio Grande with a few miles north of it as well. The rest of Texas was not too happy with that because they felt like instead of them having say so, the Coahuila section would have say so, and it's because of the fact there was a greater population. And it turned out when the legislature met, turned out to be at least partly true. 10 people from Coahuila and 2 people from their section. So there was some concern about representation. There was also a concern about immigration. There was no doubt there was a need for people to come to the state. And what they did was they created a plan to invite people to come to the state. Now you have to understand, one of the things that the people in Mexico wanted was to have people in Mexico be citizens of that country. That was one thing. There was also a strong commitment to their religious beliefs. The Roman Catholic Church was a dominant church in that area. And in order to have the land and and have the chance at the land, you had to become a citizen and become a Roman Catholic. So when the Americans were moved over there, those were 2 stipulations. There was also something else that was promoted, and this was promoted by the State Colonization Law of 1825. The State Colonization Law of 1825 had the idea of bringing people who are successful over to that area. That way, the people who are successful could bring others. It's called empresarios, is what they called them. Empressarios, empresarios. These were well to do businessmen. Now, what was the arrangement? The arrangement was pretty straightforward. These businessmen would be offered land. Now, for example, under the new colonization law, many people followed in the footsteps of Stephen F. Austin and became empresarios. These business people promoted settlement in Texas. Each empresario received 67,000 acres of land. 67,000 acres of land. For every 200 families he brought to Texas. Yeah, the impresario brings 200 families to Texas. He gets 67,000 acres of land. The head of a household could receive 4,428 acres of land for just pennies an acre. So they were really wanting people to come. Now, new settlers would not have to pay taxes. New settlers would not have to pay taxes for 10 years. That's an incentive. The law's only requirements, as we talked about earlier, were that settlers became Catholics and Mexican citizens of good character. The impresarios introduced a large wave of U.S. immigration to Texas. Now, between 1825 and 1832, the Mexican government, gave impresarial contracts to some 24 individuals. Most impresarios were Americans, but a few were Europeans. Scotsman Arthur G. Wavell and his partner Benjamin Milam, received a contract to settle in northeast Texas. Irishman James Power, James Hudson, John McMillan, and James McClellan also founded colonies, though none were terribly successful. In the end, only a few impresarios managed to create lasting colonies. One of the successful impresarios was Green DeWitt. Green DeWitt. In 1825, he received a contract to settle 400 families in Texas. DeWitt's colony was located along the Guadalupe River. Gonzales was its main town. You can see the location of DeWitt's and others on a map. If we turn to page 177, I guess I could show you a map here. It'd be right here. Well, it's basically, well, you take a map of Texas and you draw it. I could draw a map of Texas real quick. Map of Texas. And let's see where this is real quick. There you go. Gonzales should be right about here. Okay. Right about there in Texas. Right? So that was a successful settlement. One of the most successful ones. So as you can see, this did work. The impresarial system did work. And Gonzales, Green DeWitt was a very successful businessman. Gonzales was his main town. The settlement location exposed it to American Indian attacks, and the people had few comforts. Despite these hardships, more than 525 people lived there by 1831. 525 people. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a small town, and it was a nice settlement for that time. So as you can see, this was one way to bring people to Texas, and it was successful. Thanks for watching.